There was a gate across their road on a Monday morning. No warning, no letter, just a keypad and a code that worked. 140 households had been driving that road for 25 years. Private gated community. Paved. Resurfaced twice. The HOA president called it their lifeline. It wasn't their road. I'm a retired title examiner. For 40 years my job was one thing: find the gap, the missing instrument, the deed that should have been there and wasn't. In 2022 I found one. A developer had built a 1.1-mile access road in 1998, on the wrong parcel. The landowner died in 2007 without ever knowing the road was there. His estate sat dormant for 17 years. I bought the parcel at estate sale, 900 acres. The road came with it. I installed the gate on a Monday. By Friday, 134 households had received reservation of rights letters from their title insurers. The HOA fought it for months. The judge asked one question. 1. They recorded the easement in 68 days. All right, before we get started, comment where you're watching from, smash that like button, and hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Cecil Rowe had been reading deed chains the way other men read maps. Not for where they went, but for where they stopped, where they skipped, where the instrument that should have been there wasn't. Since his first year as a title examiner's apprentice in 1981, when his supervisor had handed him a chain of title for a 40-acre parcel and had said, "Find the gap." It had taken him 4 hours. The gap had been a 1934 administrator's deed that had been recorded in the wrong grantor index, invisible to a standard search, but present in the records if you knew to look for it in the estate filings. He had found it. His supervisor had said, "That's the work. The gap is always there. Your job is to find it before someone else builds on top of it." He had spent 40 years finding gaps. The Ridgeline Drive gap had found him first. He had not been looking for it. He had been conducting a routine county parcel review in the spring of 2022, a systematic scan of the county's Eastern Range parcel records that he performed every 2 to 3 years as a professional habit, the kind of broad pattern title review that a retired examiner did to stay current with the county's recording patterns and to identify anything in the public record that warranted closer attention. He had been working through the parcel index in alphabetical order, by grantor name, when he had pulled the chain for a parcel listed under the estate of Gordon J. Flatt, deceased, a 900-acre timber and grazing property in the county's Eastern Range, the estate in administrative dormancy, the parcel listed as unresolved in the county's estate records. He had looked at the parcel's location on the county assessor's map and had noted that the parcel's western boundary ran along the ridge spine in the Eastern Range. He had pulled the adjacent parcel's records, Ridgeline Estates, a 140-unit HOA development constructed in 1999, the common area parcel held by the Ridgeline Estates HOA. He had looked at the development's access, one road in, one road out, a paved road running 1.1 miles from the county highway to the HOA's main gate, the road corridor running along the ridge spine that formed the flat parcel's western boundary. He had looked at the road's recorded status in the county's road index, not listed. He had looked at the flat parcel's deed records for any easement recorded in favor of Ridgeline Estates or Pinnacle Homes or the county. None. He had looked at the County Road Commission's acceptance records for Ridgeline Drive. No acceptance recorded. He had set the parcel map printout on his desk and had looked at the road corridor's position relative to the flat parcel's boundary line. The road was on the flat parcel. He could see it in the assessor's map overlay, the road's center line running approximately 30 feet inside the flat parcel's western boundary, for the full 1.1-mile length, the road corridor entirely within the flat parcel, never crossing onto the Ridgeline Estates common area parcel or onto the county right-of-way. He had written in his parcel review notebook, flat parcel, Eastern Range, road corridor, Ridgeline Drive, appears to run entirely within flat parcel's western margin, no easement recorded, no road dedication, no county acceptance, warrants full chain review. He had begun the full chain review the following week. The chain of title for the flat parcel ran from the current estate administration back through 14 conveyances to the original federal land patent issued in 1887, a homestead entry patent conveying the 900-acre parcel to a settler named James Aldrich. The patent recorded in the county deed records in September 1887 and indexed under the federal patent recording system. Cecil had pulled each conveyance in the chain and had read it in sequence. the 1887 patent, the 1903 warranty deed from Aldrich to a timber company, the 1931 timber company dissolution and assignment to a successor, the 1948 warranty deed to a ranching family named Holt, the 1967 warranty deed from the Holt estate to an agricultural holding company, the 1979 warranty deed from the holding company to Gordon J. Flatt as an individual, and the estate's dormancy following Flatt's death in 2007. He had read each instrument for three elements: the parcel's boundary description, the reservations and exceptions clause, and any easement grants or encumbrances. The 1887 patent had described the parcel by its government survey legal description: township, range, section, and quarter section. The subsequent conveyances had carried the legal description forward, each warranty deed restating the boundary description without material change. No conveyance in the chain had granted a road easement. No conveyance had reserved a road easement. No conveyance had referenced Ridgeline Drive or any predecessor road corridor on the parcel's western margin. He had then pulled the development chain, the conveyances that had brought the adjacent parcel from its agricultural predecessor to Pinnacle Homes, and then to the Ridgeline Estates HOA. The adjacent parcel's chain was shorter: a 1994 warranty deed from an agricultural holding company to Pinnacle Homes LLC, and a 2000 Community Association deed from Pinnacle Homes to the Ridgeline Estates HOA, conveying the 22-acre common area parcel. He had read both instruments for easement grants across the Flatt parcel. None. Pinnacle Homes had not obtained an easement from Gordon Flatt before building the road. The Community Association deed had not conveyed any access easement across the Flatt parcel to the HOA. The HOA's 22-acre common area parcel had been conveyed without road access rights. He had pulled Pinnacle Homes' road construction permit from the County Building Department's records, a 1997 permit for the construction of a private road on what the permit described as the applicant's property. He had read the permit's parcel description. It had described the road corridor as being on the Ridgeline Estates development parcel. This was incorrect. The road corridor was on the Flatt parcel, not the development parcel. The County Building Department had issued the permit based on Pinnacle Homes' representation and had not verified the road corridor's parcel location against the deed records. The permit did not constitute a road dedication. The permit did not constitute an easement. The permit was a construction authorization based on a misrepresentation of the road corridor's ownership. He had pulled the County Road Commission's records for Ridgeline Drive through 2022. No acceptance petition filed by Pinnacle Homes. No acceptance petition filed by the HOA. No county maintenance records for the road. No county road sign installation record. The county had never been asked to accept the road and had never accepted it. The road was not a county road. He had pulled the title insurance commitments for 3 representative Ridgeline Estates property closings, available through the county clerk's public records, and had read the Schedule B exceptions in each, the standard title exceptions for taxes, assessments, and rights of parties in possession, but no exception for the road corridor's private ownership, because no title examiner conducting the commitment had identified the Flatt parcel's encroachment. The road corridor's private status had been invisible to every title search conducted on every Ridgeline Estates property, because every examiner had looked at the development parcel's chain and had assumed the road was either on the development parcel or on a county right-of-way. None of them had looked at the adjacent parcel's chain. None of them had laid the road corridor's center line against the Flatt parcel's western boundary description. Cecil had. He had done it 3 times, with 3 different survey base maps, using the legal descriptions from the 1887 patent, the 1979 Flatt deed, and the county assessor's current parcel geometry. All 3 overlays produced the same result. The road was on the Flatt parcel for its full 1.1 mile length. He had written in his parcel review notebook at the end of the chain review, "Chain complete, 1887 to 2022. Finding: Ridgeline Drive runs entirely within Flatt parcel's western margin. No easement recorded at any point in chain. No road dedication recorded. No county acceptance. Pinnacle Homes constructed road on Flatt parcel without owner's permission, without easement, without dedication. HOA has maintained road for 22+ years without recorded right. Title insurance on 140 Ridgeline Estates properties does not accept the road corridor's private ownership. Gap confirmed. He had set the notebook down and had looked at the parcel map on his desk. The flat parcel's western boundary, the road corridor running inside it. 140 households using a road on land a man named Gordon Flatt had owned, without knowing a developer had built a road on it. The estate dormant, the gap open. He had not done anything with the finding immediately. He had filed the research in a folder labeled Flat Parcel, Ridgeline Drive Title Defect, and had continued his routine parcel review. He had returned to the finding periodically over the following year, each time reviewing the chain with fresh attention, each time reaching the same conclusion. In the summer of 2023, the county's estate administration office had listed the flat parcel for public sale. A notice in the county paper's legal section, the parcel described as a 900-acre timber and grazing property in the Eastern Range, available by sealed bid. He had read the listing, and had looked at the parcel map, and had thought about the research file in his drawer. He had thought about it for 3 weeks. He had walked the road once, had driven to the county highway junction, parked his truck at the road's entrance, and had walked the full 1.1 miles along the ridge spine to the HOA's main gate and back. 2 miles on a paved road that was on land nobody had claimed in 17 years. The timber and grass growing to the road's shoulders on both sides. The ridge spine carrying the pavement toward the HOA's gate in a smooth, straight corridor that Pinnacle Homes had carved out of Gordon Flatt's parcel without asking. He had walked back to his truck at the county highway junction and had stood at the road's entrance, the point where Ridgeline Drive left the county right-of-way and entered the flat parcel, and had looked at the road's first 50 feet on private land. 40 years of title examination had made the legal character of that pavement as visible to him as the pavement itself. He had submitted a sealed bid for the parcel in August 2023. He had been the only bidder. The estate administrator had accepted his bid in October 2023. The purchase and sale agreement had been executed in November 2023, the closing in March 2024. His deed recorded in the county deed records on April 3, 2024. He had prepared his own title commitment before closing. The chain of title reviewed one final time. The road corridor's private status confirmed. Every instrument from 1887 to the estate's conveyance to him verified and filed. He had prepared a title research memorandum for his own file, dated the day before closing, summarizing the chain, the defect, the absence of any easement or dedication, and the HOA's 25-year unauthorized use of the road corridor. He had signed and dated the memorandum, and had filed it behind the deed in his title research files. His deed had recorded on April 3, 2024, at 9:47 a.m. in the county deed records, indexed under his name as grantee. He had pulled the recording confirmation from the county clerk's online portal at his desk that afternoon and had set it on the title research file. The 900-acre parcel was his. The road was on his property. It had been on his property since 9:47 a.m. on April 3, 2024. He had called Clara Venn that afternoon. She had been referred to him by the same network of county practitioners who had referred Harlan Dodd and Walter Greer, the title and property law community in the county's western district, where Clara's reputation in recorded instrument disputes had grown through 5 years of HOA enforcement proceedings. He had briefed her in 40 minutes, the chain of title, the road corridor's physical location, the absence of any easement or dedication, the county's non-acceptance, the HOA's 25-year use, the title insurance dimension, and his decision to purchase with full knowledge of the defect. She had been quiet for a moment after he finished. Then she had said, "You bought a 900-acre parcel specifically because the title defect made it valuable." He had said, "I bought a 900-acre parcel that had been dormant for 17 years at estate sale price because my title research identified a significant legal issue affecting an adjacent community that needed to be resolved and had been ignored because nobody had looked at the right chain. The defect was not creating value for me. It was creating liability for 140 households who had no idea it existed." She had said, "Fair. Send me the full research file." He had sent it that evening. The complete chain documentation from 1887 forward, the 3 survey overlays confirming the road corridor's position within his parcel, the Pinnacle Homes road construction permit and its misrepresented parcel description, the County Road Commission's non-acceptance records, the title insurance commitment excerpts from the 3 representative closings, and his pre-closing research memorandum. She had called the next morning and had said, "The chain is clean. The defect is exactly what your research shows. The demand letter goes out Monday." He had said, "I want to be reasonable. The HOA didn't cause the defect. Their developer did. They've been maintaining that road for 25 years in good faith." Clara had said, "Good faith use of someone else's property without a recorded instrument is still unauthorized use. It's still trespass at law. The remedy is the recorded instrument, the easement that should have been negotiated in 1997 before the road was built. The demand letter gives them the opportunity to negotiate it. That's the reasonable path." He had said, "Write the letter." She had said, "I'll have it Monday." He had gone to the road that evening, the April dusk cool on the ridge, the pavement running north from the county highway junction, through his timberland toward the HOA's main gate, 1.1 miles ahead, the gate's stone pillars visible at the road's far end in the fading light. He had stood at the road's entrance and had looked at the pavement. His name was on the deed. His survey overlays were in the research file. His 40 years of title examination had produced a chain of title stretching back to an 1887 federal patent that described this ridge as private land. And every instrument in the chain from 1887 to April 3, 2024, had been consistent on one point. No one had ever given anyone the right to build a road here. He had written in his title research log that evening, "Deed recorded April 3, 2024. Road corridor confirmed within parcel boundaries. No easement recorded. No dedication, no county acceptance. Clara Venn retained. Demand letter Monday. 140 households. 1.1 miles. 25 years. Matter. Open." He had looked at the last line. He had added, "The gap is always there. This one has been here since 1997. He had closed the log and gone inside. Pinnacle Homes had filed the Ridgeline Estates development plan with the County Planning Department in February 1997. The site plan had shown 140 residential lots, arranged along the ridge system in the county's eastern range. The lots ranging from 0.6 to 2.1 acres. The development's access provided by a single road running 1.1 miles from the county highway to the development's main gate along the ridge spine. The road had been labeled on the site plan as Ridgeline Drive, Primary Access Road, Private. The site plan had not shown the road corridor's parcel ownership. The site plan had not shown that the road corridor ran entirely within the adjacent timber parcel, owned by Gordon J. Flatt. The County Planning Department had approved the conditional use permit in June 1997, based on the site plan's road access representation, without verifying the road corridor's parcel location against the deed records. The County Building Department had issued the road construction permit in August 1997, based on Pinnacle Homes' representation that the road would be built on the applicant's property. The road had been built in 1998 on Gordon Flatt's property. The construction had proceeded without incident in the specific way that construction proceeds without incident when the affected landowner doesn't know it's happening. Gordon Flatt had been living in Phoenix at the time, a retired postal worker who had inherited the 900-acre timber parcel from his uncle in 1979, had driven out to see it once in 1980, had found it remote and unimproved, and had left it in the county's tax records as a passive holding, paying the property taxes each year from Phoenix, never returning. He had not been notified of the road construction permit. Pinnacle Homes had not contacted him. The county's permit process had not required adjacent landowner notification for a private road construction permit. The road had been built on his parcel while he was in Phoenix, and he had died in 2007 without ever knowing it was there. The 140 homes had been constructed between 1998 and 2002, and had sold at prices ranging from $310,000 for the smallest interior lot to $590,000 for the largest Ridgeview lot. The development marketed as Ridgeline Estates, private ridgetop living with gated community access. The marketing materials had described Ridgeline Drive as the community's private access road, maintained exclusively for Ridgeline Estates residents. The word private, in that context, had meant private to the HOA, residents only, no public through traffic. It had not addressed the road's underlying parcel ownership, because no one in Pinnacle Homes' development process had looked at the adjacent parcel's chain to verify that the road corridor was on Pinnacle Homes property. The title insurance policies issued at each of the 140 closings had been written by 4 different underwriters, 2 national title insurance companies, and 2 regional carriers. Each policy's Schedule B exceptions had listed the standard encumbrances, taxes, assessments, rights of parties in possession, the HOA's CC&Rs, and the development's recorded plat. None of the Schedule B exceptions had listed the road corridor's private ownership status because none of the 4 underwriters' title examiners had identified it. Each policy's Schedule A coverage had included road access, the standard affirmative coverage language confirming that the insured property had legal access to a public road. The public road was the county highway. The access to the county highway was Ridgeline Drive. The title insurance policies had represented, at 140 closings over 4 years, that the access to the county highway was legally established. It had not been. It had been 1.1 miles of pavement on Gordon Flats land with no recorded legal basis. Cecil had calculated the aggregate title insurance exposure in his pre-closing research memorandum. The 140 policies, written at closing prices averaging $387,000 per unit, carried aggregate coverage of approximately $54,180,000. The road access representation was in every policy. If the road access were found to be legally defective, which a quiet title judgment in Cecil's favor would establish, every policy's road access coverage would be triggered. The 4 underwriters would face aggregate claims exposure across 140 policies, each claim arising from the same defect that every examiner had missed, because no one had looked at the right chain. He had filed the exposure calculation in the research file behind the title commitment excerpts and had not revised the number. It had been accurate at the time of purchase and remained accurate on the demand letter's delivery date. The Ridgeline Estates HOA had formed in October 2001 when the development reached its minimum owner occupancy threshold. Its CC&Rs had been drafted by Pinnacle Homes' HOA formation attorney and recorded in the county deed records, the governing documents describing Ridgeline Drive as the community's primary access infrastructure, maintained by the association for the exclusive use and benefit of Ridgeline Estates property owners. The CC&Rs had not mentioned Gordon Flats parcel. The CC&Rs had not mentioned the road corridor's private ownership status. The CC&Rs had described a road the HOA did not have the legal right to maintain or use, and had recorded that description in the county deed records where it had been sitting for 23 years, telling Ridgeline Estates residents something that was not supported by a single instrument in the flat parcels chain. The HOA's road maintenance budget had been a line item in every annual budget since 2001. In the early years, it had covered routine maintenance, crack sealing, line striping, signage. In 2012, the HOA had undertaken its first major resurfacing project, a full mill and long overlay of the road's 1.1-mile length at a cost of $87,000, funded by a special assessment of $621 per unit. The 2012 resurfacing had been Maryland Cross's predecessor's project, executed with the confidence of a board that believed it was maintaining its own infrastructure. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, another full mill and overlay, at a cost of $87,000. A full example if it's not meeting more than the third by the UFC, but a cost of its second major resurfacing at a cost of supported by relateds per 2. The cost of describe in major resurfacing. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing at a cost of $621. In the 2020, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing at a cost of supported by relateds per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing in a cost of supported by relateds per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing at a cost of supported by relateds per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing at a cost of supported by relateds per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing at a cost of supported by relateds per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing at a cost of supported by relateds per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, and a cost of supported by a related per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, at a cost of supported by a related per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, at a cost of supported by a related per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, at a cost of supported by a related per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, at a cost of supported by a related per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, at a cost of supported by a related per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, at a cost of supported by a related per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, at a cost of supported by a related per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, at a cost of supported by a related per 2. In 2021, the HOA had undertaken its second major resurfacing, at a cost of supported by a related per 2, funded by a special assessment of $621 per unit. The 2012 resurfacing had been at a cost of $112,000, funded by a combination of the road maintenance reserve and a special assessment of $480 per unit. This one had been Maryland's project. Maryland had become HOA president in 2020, the third president in the HOA's history, following the original developer-appointed board and a 12-year presidency by a resident named Thomas Hicks, who had retired to Florida. She was organized, detail-oriented, and had the specific confidence of a community leader who had successfully managed a $112,000 infrastructure project and had delivered a resurfaced road to 140 households on schedule and under budget. She had written about the 2021 resurfacing project in the community newsletter with the proprietary satisfaction of a president who understood that the road was the community's most critical maintained asset. Ridgeline Drive is our lifeline, the road that connects every one of our 140 families to the world beyond our gate. This year's resurfacing represents our commitment to maintaining that lifeline at the highest standard. The road is ours, and we take care of it. She had appeared in a County Community Association magazine feature in 2022, Ridgeline Estates, a model HOA for infrastructure stewardship, in which she had described the HOA's road maintenance philosophy, its reserve funding discipline, and Ridgeline Drive as the centerpiece of the HOA's infrastructure portfolio. The magazine had photographed her standing on Ridgeline Drive at the development's main gate, the paved road running south behind her toward the county highway. She had said, "That road represents 22 years of community investment. We maintain it, we fund it, we own it. It's the foundation of everything Ridgeline Estates is." She had never looked at whose name was on the deed for the land the road ran across. The HOA's 25 years of forum posts and annual meeting minutes had treated Ridgeline Drive with the institutional certainty of an organization that had never questioned its ownership. The annual meeting minutes were consistent across 25 years. The road maintenance report delivered by the Facilities Committee chair at each annual meeting, the reserve fund balance for road maintenance noted, the resurfacing schedule discussed and updated. Not once in 25 years of annual meeting minutes had any board member asked, "Do we have a recorded easement for this road?" The question had not been asked because the question had not been conceivable. The road was the HOA's road. It said so in the CC and Rs. They had built it, maintained it, resurfaced it twice, and driven it every day for a quarter century. Cecil had read the annual meeting minutes for the years available in the county's HOA registration records, the last 7 years, required to be filed with the county clerk. He had read the road maintenance reports for each year and had filed them in the research folder behind the title insurance exposure calculation. He had read Maryland's 2021 newsletter about the resurfacing project. He had filed it. He had read the 2022 magazine feature. He had filed it. He had written nothing in the research file's margin about any of these documents. They were evidence, not analysis, and the analysis was already complete. He had driven Ridgeline Drive one more time after his deed recorded. The week after closing, on a Tuesday morning in April 2024, driving his truck from the county highway junction to the HOA's main gate and back. He had noted the road's condition. Good, the 2021 resurfacing holding well. No significant cracking or surface distress. The lane markings fresh, the drainage ditches clear. The HOA had maintained the road properly. He had noted the road's physical dimensions, approximately 22 feet of paved surface, 2-foot gravel shoulders, drainage ditches on both sides, the road corridor occupying approximately 30 feet of width within his parcel's western margin, for the full 1.1-mile length. He had estimated the road corridor's land area, approximately 3.9 acres of his 900-acre parcel, the most valuable 3.9 acres on the property in terms of its legal and community significance. He had noted the locations of the utility infrastructure running along the road corridor, the overhead electric service line, the telephone cable, the buried fiber optic conduit, whose installation notice he had found in the county's permit records, all of them running along a road corridor on his property without easements. He had added a utility easement dimension to the demand letter's scope when he had called Clara after the drive. Clara had said, "Good catch." The utility infrastructure adds 3 additional unauthorized encumbrances to the parcel. I'll include them in the demand letter's scope: the access easement, the utility corridor easements, and the compensation for 25 years of unauthorized use across all of them. The demand letter had gone out on a Monday, 11 pages, certified mail to the HOA's registered agent, to Marilyn Cross individually as HOA president, and to the HOA's management company. The letter's core demand had 3 components. First, a recorded permanent access easement appurtenant to the HOA's common area parcel, establishing the legal right to use Ridgeline Drive for ingress and egress, at fair market value reflecting the road corridor's strategic location as the development's only access. Second, recorded utility easements for the electric, telephone, and fiber optic infrastructure running along the road corridor, at fair market value per utility. Third, compensation for 25 years of unauthorized use of Cecil's property. The road corridor's trespass period calculated from 1999 through 2024 at the county's established land use rate for private road corridors. Clara had included one paragraph near the letter's close that she had read to Cecil before sending. The access easement that Cecil Rowe is offering to negotiate is the instrument that Pinnacle Homes was required to obtain from Gordon J. Flatt before constructing Ridgeline Drive in 1998. Its absence from the Ridgeline Drive parcel's deed records constitutes a title defect that affects the access coverage of every title insurance policy issued at closing for every Ridgeline Estates property. The licensed title insurance underwriters who issued those policies carry a contractual obligation to defend their insured's access rights against a claim of defective title. Those underwriters will become aware of this matter when the quiet title action is filed in county court. The recorded access easement that Mr. Rowe is proposing would resolve the title defect in the deed records and close the underwriter's exposure before the filing date. The HOA's response deadline is 30 days. Cecil had read that paragraph twice. He had said, "The title insurers." Clara had said, "Marilyn Cross has maintained that road for 4 years and resurfaced it for $112,000. She is confident." The title insurers are not going to be confident when they receive their first reservation of rights inquiry. Their legal departments move faster than any HOA board when a policy's affirmative access coverage is in question. I want the HOA to understand that the clock is not just running on their response deadline. It is running on their insurer's awareness of the defect. He had said, "Send it." She had sent it on Monday. Cecil had driven to the county highway junction that afternoon and had stood at the road's entrance one more time, the pavement running north through his timberland, the HOA's main gate visible 1.1 miles ahead, 140 households driving this road this afternoon and this evening and tomorrow morning. On his property, on his deed, the gap that had been open since 1997, now named and documented, and 30 days from either a negotiated resolution or a gate across the road, and a quiet title action in county court. He had written in his title research log, "Demand letter delivered. Response deadline, 30 days. Access easement, utility easements, compensation for 25-year trespass. Title insurance exposure paragraph included. Gate installation materials purchased and staged. Clara Venn, counsel of record. Matter, open." He had looked at the last line. The gap was always there. His job had always been to find it. He had found this one. It was his now. He went home. Clara had pulled the full deed chain on a Wednesday evening. She had the county deed records portal open on her office computer, the grantor-grantee index search running on the flat parcel's legal description, the results loading in sequence from the oldest recorded instrument forward. Cecil had sent her the complete research file the night of his deed recording, the chain documentation from 1887 through the estate conveyance to him, the 3 survey overlays, the permit records, the title commitment excerpts, and she had read it twice before calling him the next morning. But she pulled the chain herself as she always did, beginning with the instrument and working forward, because 40 years of property litigation had taught her that the most important thing a lawyer could do in a recorded instrument dispute was read the chain independently and find what her client had found before she stood in front of a judge and said it was there. The 1887 patent was the foundation, the federal homestead entry patent, conveying the 900-acre parcel to James Aldrich, recorded September 12, 1887, in the County Deed Records Federal Patent Index, the legal description in government survey format. Township 14 North, Range 8 East, Section 22, the full section and its adjacent quarter sections comprising the 900-acre parcel's original extent. She had read the patent's grant language, its boundary description, and its reservations clause, the standard federal patent reservations for mineral rights and public road rights-of-way along section lines. The section line reservation was the one instrument in the entire chain that reserved any road right on the parcel, and it reserved a right-of-way along the section lines of the government survey grid, not along the ridge spine where Ridgeline Drive ran, which crossed the section lines diagonally and bore no relationship to the government survey road reservation. She had read each subsequent conveyance in the chain for the same 3 elements Cecil had examined: boundary description, reservations and exceptions, easement grants. The 1903 Timber Company deed, warranty deed, full covenants, no easement grants, no road reservations beyond the federal patent's section line language carried forward in the exceptions clause. The 1931 dissolution assignment, the same exceptions carried forward. The 1948 Holt family deed, the same. The 1967 Agricultural Holding Company deed, the same. The 1979 flat deed, the same, with one addition: a handwritten notation in the margin of the original recorded instrument that the county recorder had indexed as a notation but not as a separate instrument. She had pulled the notation's image from the records and had read it. Grantee notes: property includes timber access roads along northern and eastern margins per prior use. No formal easement recorded. The notation referenced timber access roads on the northern and eastern margins, not the western margin where Ridgeline Drive ran. The notation was Flat's own acknowledgement of the informal timber road network that had existed on the parcel before his purchase, and it was on the wrong side of the parcel to have any bearing on Ridgeline Drive. She had set the chain documents in sequence on her conference table and had written her findings: instrument, operative provisions, gaps, exposure. The instrument: 900-acre parcel, Cecil Rowe as grantee per deed recorded April 3, 2024. Chain of title from 1887 federal patent through 14 conveyances, complete and unbroken. The operative provisions: fee simple ownership of the parcel's full extent, including the western margin through which Ridgeline Drive ran for its 1.1-mile length. Federal patent section line road reservation, inapplicable to Ridgeline Drive's location. No other reservation, exception, or easement grant affecting the road corridor in any instrument in the chain. The gaps: no road dedication recorded by Pinnacle Homes. No access easement recorded in favor of Ridgeline Estates HOA, Pinnacle Homes, or any predecessor. No county road acceptance. No utility easements for the electric, telephone, or fiber optic infrastructure running along the road corridor. Complete absence of any recorded instrument establishing any right of any person to use Ridgeline Drive's corridor. The exposure: 140 residential properties whose only access to the county highway ran across private property owned by Cecil Rowe, without a single recorded instrument establishing that access right. Title insurance policies on all 140 properties carrying affirmative access coverage, representing that the access was legally established. 4 underwriters with aggregate policy exposure of approximately $54 million against a defect none of their examiners had identified. She had called Cecil at 8 the next morning and had confirmed his findings without qualification. The chain was exactly what his research had shown. The demand letter's legal basis was solid. She had said, Marilyn Cross is going to hire a property lawyer who will make 3 arguments: prescriptive easement, implied dedication, and public policy. I want you to understand each argument and why it fails before the HOA's response arrives, because when it arrives, you are going to want to act immediately. Cecil had said, walk me through them. She had said, prescriptive easement first. The HOA will argue that 25 years of open, notorious, continuous, hostile, and uninterrupted use of Ridgeline Drive has created a prescriptive easement in their favor. The argument fails on the hostile element. Prescriptive easement requires use that is hostile to the owner, meaning use without the owner's permission and in a manner inconsistent with the owner's ownership rights. Gordon Flatt's use, or rather his non-use and non-knowledge, was not permission. But prescriptive easement also requires that the use be hostile during the statutory prescriptive period, and the statutory period in this state is 20 years. The HOA's use began in 1999. The statutory period ran to 2019. For the hostile element to be established, the use from 1999 to 2019 had to be hostile to an owner who was alive and could have known about the use. Flatt died in 2007. His estate entered administrative dormancy in 2007. The question is whether use against a dormant estate constitutes prescriptive use against an owner with capacity to object. The answer under this state's case law is complicated, and the HOA knows it, which is why they'll lead with the other arguments. She had said, implied dedication second. The HOA will argue that Pinnacle Homes' construction of a road, its use as the development's access road, and 25 years of community use constitute an implied dedication of the road to public use, creating a public road that cannot be closed. The argument fails because implied dedication requires 2 elements: the owner's intent to dedicate and the public's acceptance of the dedication. Neither element is present. Pinnacle Homes never expressed any intent to dedicate the road because Pinnacle Homes apparently didn't know it was on Flatt's parcel. Gordon Flatt never expressed any intent to dedicate because he never knew the road existed, and the county never accepted the road. No maintenance, no signage, no acceptance petition, no county road designation. Without acceptance, there is no public road, regardless of how long the community has used it. She had said, public policy third. This is the argument that will resonate most with a judge and least succeed as a legal matter. The HOA will argue that closing a road used by 140 families as their only access to the county highway is against public policy and constitutes an unconscionable exercise of property rights, regardless of the legal ownership question. The argument is not a legal defense to a quiet title action. Public policy does not override a property owner's right to have title quieted in his name, and it does not create an easement where none was recorded. But it will influence the judge's thinking about the remedy, and it is why the court's order will almost certainly require a negotiated easement rather than a permanent closure. The public policy argument is not wrong as a matter of equity. It is just not a defense. Cecil had said. And the gate, she had said, the gate is legally unambiguous. It is your property. You may install a gate on your property at any location. The gate does not block access permanently. You have committed to providing the HOA with the gate code, and a gate equipped with a keypad that the community can use is not a closure. It is an assertion of ownership. The gate is the physical instrument that makes the legal argument visible. Every resident who enters the code every morning understands, in a way that no court filing can communicate, that they are on someone else's property. The HOA's response letter had arrived on day 22 of the 30-day window. 8 pages, on the letterhead of a property and litigation firm named Breckenridge & Cole, signed by a partner named Alan Breckenridge. The letter ran the 3 arguments Clara had predicted, in the order she had predicted them, with the addition of a 4th, adverse possession. The HOA had argued that the combination of the prescriptive easement claim and the 25-year use period constituted adverse possession of the road corridor itself, not just a use right, but actual title to the 3.9-acre road corridor, on the grounds that the use had been open, notorious, continuous, hostile, exclusive, and actual for the full statutory period. Clara had called Cecil after reading the letter and had said, "The adverse possession claim is creative and wrong. Adverse possession of a road corridor used by 140 households is not exclusive use. It is shared use, which defeats the exclusivity element. The road was used by every resident, every delivery vehicle, every guest. Exclusive adverse possession requires that the possessor's use excludes the true owner and all others. A shared community access road is the opposite of exclusive possession." The board had met on a Thursday evening, all 5 members present, Breckenridge on the phone, 31 residents in attendance. The vote to reject the demand had been 5-0, unanimous, immediate. Breckenridge's assessment that the prescriptive easement and adverse possession claims were defensible, providing the board's confidence. Marilyn had said at the meeting, according to the summary posted to the HOA forum the following morning, "This road belongs to this community. We built it, we maintain it, we fund it, we use it every day. A property owner who bought land next door does not get to claim our road because of a paperwork gap from 1997. We will fight this in court." The community meeting had followed 6 days later, all 140 units notified, held in the development's clubhouse, standing room. Marilyn had presented from the front of the room with the composed certainty of a president who had successfully managed a $112,000 road project and was now managing a legal challenge to the road itself. She had described Cecil's claim as opportunistic, a property purchaser who had specifically sought out a title defect in order to extract money from an established community, a predatory exercise of a technical legal position against 140 families who had bought their homes in good faith. She had said, "Nobody is closing this road. Nobody is putting a gate on our road. We have legal counsel, we have a defensible position, and we will protect this community's access." A resident named Dennis Park, Unit 78, whose property was one of the last lots before the main gate, meaning he drove Ridgeline Drive's full length twice daily, had raised his hand and had asked, "What happens to our title insurance if the court finds the road is on his property?" Breckenridge's associate, present in the room, had said, "The title insurance question is a separate matter that the HOA's counsel is monitoring. The board's focus is on the legal defense." Dennis Park had said, "With respect, my focus is on my policy." The associate had not responded further. Dennis Park had called his title insurer the next morning. Cecil had read the community meeting summary in the county paper. Ridgeline Estates HOA vows to defend community road against property claim, at his kitchen table on a Saturday morning. He had read Marilyn's quote, "Nobody is putting a gate on our road." He had set the paper down and had called Clara. He had said, "The meeting summary is in the paper. Marilyn told 140 households, nobody is putting a gate on their road." Clara had said, "I read it this morning." He had said, "File the action." She had said, "Monday morning. Quiet title and trespass. County District Court." And Cecil, "The gate. Install it Monday concurrent with the filing. The gate's installation on your property is a lawful exercise of your property rights. Its timing, concurrent with the filing, establishes that you are asserting ownership in both the legal and the physical records simultaneously. The gate is not punitive. It is not a closure. It is a property marker with a keypad. Give Breckenridge the code when he calls." Cecil had said, "He'll call before noon." She had said, "Give him the code and tell him the gate stays until there's a recorded easement. Those are the only 2 things you need to say." He had ordered the gate materials in March, before the demand letter went out. A 14-foot powder-coated steel swing gate, the posts, the concrete footings, the keypad entry system, all staged in his barn. He had obtained the county building permit for the gate installation in February, a private gate on a private road on private property. The permit issued without complication, the county building department's inspector having confirmed the installation location was within his parcel's boundary. He had gone to the road on Monday morning at 7 a.m. with the post hole digger, the concrete mix, and the gate assembly. He had set the posts at his parcel's western boundary, the point where Ridgeline Drive crossed from the county highway right-of-way onto his property, the boundary confirmed by his own survey monument set at closing. He had poured the footings and had waited for the concrete to cure through the morning while the gate leaned against his truck. At 2 p.m., he had hung the gate on the cured posts, installed the keypad on the north post, programmed the entry code, and swung the gate closed for the first time. He had stood at the gate and had looked north along Ridgeline Drive, the pavement running through his timberland toward the HOA's main gate, 1.1 miles ahead, the road that 140 households would drive home this evening, entering a code on a keypad to pass through a gate on private property, because a developer in 1997 had built a road on the wrong parcel, and nobody had looked at the right chain until Cecil had. He had photographed the gate in the closed position, the keypad, the survey monument at the boundary, and the road corridor running north through his parcel. He had dated the photographs and filed them in the title research folder. Breckenridge had called at 11:40 a.m., 40 minutes before Clara's predicted noon. Cecil had given him the code. He had said, "The gate stays until there's a recorded easement in the county deed records, establishing the HOA's right to use Ridgeline Drive. Those are the only terms. Clara Venn's number is in the demand letter." Breckenridge had said, "This will not stand in court." Cecil had said, "The court will decide that. In the meantime, the code is 4772, and the gate opens inward." He had ended the call and had written in his title research log, "Gate installed Monday, 2 p.m., at parcel's western boundary. Keypad operational. Code provided to HOA council. Action filed Monday a.m. by Clara Venn. Quiet title and trespass. County District Court. Demand rejected 5-0. Marilyn Cross, HOA president, told community meeting nobody is putting a gate on their road. Gate is on their road. Matter. Filed." He had looked at the log entry. He had thought about his supervisor in 1981 handing him a chain of title and saying, "Find the gap." He had found it. He had bought it. He had built a gate on it. The gap was closed now in every sense that mattered. The legal record in the court's filing index, the physical record in the gate across the road. He went home. The gate had been on the road for 6 hours when the first forum post appeared. A resident named Karen Solis, Unit 12, one of the lots closest to the county highway entrance, whose daily commute took her past the gate twice, had posted at 8:14 p.m. on the Monday of the installation. "There is a locked gate across Ridgeline Drive at the county highway end. There is a keypad. I called the management company and they gave me the code. The gate opens. But does anyone know what this is and why it's there?" The thread had generated 94 replies by midnight. The management company had posted the gate code to the community forum at 9 p.m., a practical response to the volume of calls they had received from residents returning home that evening who had found a gate where no gate had been that morning. The post had included the code and a note. "The board is aware of the gate installation and is convening an emergency meeting tomorrow evening. More information to follow." It had not explained who had installed the gate or why. Marilyn had posted at 10 p.m. "The board is meeting tomorrow. We are aware of what this gate represents and we are responding. Do not be alarmed. The code works. You can get in and out. We will have more information at the meeting tomorrow." Dennis Park had replied at 10:15. "It represents that someone else owns our road. That's what it represents." The emergency board meeting had been on a Tuesday evening. All 5 board members, Breckenridge on the phone, 47 residents in attendance in the clubhouse. Marilyn had presented the situation. Cecil Rowe had installed a private gate on Ridgeline Drive at the parcel boundary, concurrent with the filing of a quiet title and trespass action in County District Court. The gate was operational, the code worked, residents could pass, but its presence was a physical assertion of ownership that the board was taking seriously as a legal and community matter. Breckenridge had confirmed the action's filing and had outlined the HOA's defense, the prescriptive easement claim, the adverse possession theory, the implied dedication argument. He had characterized the HOA's legal position as defensible and the gate as a provocation rather than a legal action. A resident named Gail Tran, Unit 55, a real estate agent who had sold 4 properties in the development over the past 3 years, had raised her hand and had said, "I want to ask about the title insurance question. Every buyer I've represented in this development had a title policy. If the court finds that the road is on his property and we have no easement, what happens to those policies?" Breckenridge had said, "The title insurance question is complex and depends on each policy's specific language. The HOA's legal defense is focused on establishing the community's right to the road through the prescriptive and dedication claims. If those claims succeed, the title insurance question becomes moot. Gail Tran had said, and if they don't succeed? Breckenridge had said, we intend to succeed. Gail Tran had written down the names of the 4 underwriters she knew had written policies in the development and had called her broker the next morning. The title insurance companies had not needed Gail Tran's call to find the quiet title action. Clara had filed the action Monday morning at 9 a.m. in County District Court. The court's electronic filing system had indexed the case in the public case portal by 11 a.m. The case caption, the parties, the cause of action, and the parcel's legal description visible to any person or system scanning the court's new filing index. 2 of the 4 underwriters whose policies covered Ridgeline Estates properties had automated monitoring systems that scanned the county court's new filing index daily for case captions and parcel descriptions matching their active policy portfolios. Both systems had flagged the quiet title action by 3 p.m. Monday, 6 hours after the gate went up, 4 hours after the filing, 1 hour before Breckenridge had called Cecil for the gate code. The first reservation of rights letter had gone out from the larger national underwriter on Wednesday morning, 2 days after the filing. The letter went to all 67 Ridgeline Estates policyholders in that underwriter's portfolio, certified mail, the language precise. The underwriter had become aware of a pending quiet title action affecting the parcel on which Ridgeline Drive was located. The action raised a question about the legal basis of the road access coverage included in each recipient's title insurance policy. The underwriter was issuing a reservation of rights under the policy's road access coverage, pending its investigation of the claim. The underwriter was not denying coverage, but was reserving its right to do so if the investigation established that the road access defect predated the policy's issuance, and the insured was requested to provide any documentation in their possession regarding the road access right upon which their policy's access coverage was based. There was no such documentation. Every insured received the letter and had the same answer to the request: nothing. No easement, no dedication, no county road designation. The road had always just been there, and they had always just used it. The second national underwriter had sent its reservation of rights letter on Thursday, covering 48 properties in its portfolio, the same language, the same request. The first regional carrier had sent its letter on Friday, covering 19 properties, a shorter letter, but the same substantive reservation. By the end of the first week after the gate installation, 134 of the 140 Ridgeline Estates properties had received reservation of rights letters from their title insurers. The 6 properties covered by the fourth underwriter, the smaller regional carrier, had not yet received letters, but their underwriter's legal department had flagged the action in its internal monitoring system and was preparing a response. Clara had called Cecil on Friday afternoon with the count. She had said, 3 underwriters have sent reservation of rights letters to 134 policyholders in 5 business days. The fourth carrier is preparing. This is faster than any title insurance response I've seen in a comparable case. The automated monitoring systems are doing what they were designed to do. Cecil had said, Gail Tran. Clara had said, Gail Tran helped. But the national carrier's systems would have flagged it regardless. The parcel description in the quiet title action matches the legal description in every Schedule A of every policy they've written in this development. The match is automatic. He had said, the HOA's reserve account. She had said, that's the next piece. The bank holding the HOA's Road Maintenance Reserve Fund, Meridian Community Bank, has a standard commercial account covenant requiring the HOA to notify the bank of any material legal action affecting the HOA's primary maintained infrastructure. The quiet title action affects Ridgeline Drive, which is the primary maintained infrastructure. Breckenridge's office notified the bank on Wednesday, as required by the covenant. Meridian placed the Road Maintenance Reserve account in administrative review Thursday, a hold on disbursements from the account pending the bank's assessment of the legal risk to the road infrastructure the reserve was created to maintain. Cecil had said, how much is in the reserve? Clara had said, the HOA's 2023 annual filing with the county clerk shows the road maintenance reserve balance at $94,000. Accumulated over several years toward the next resurfacing cycle. The administrative hold means the board cannot access those funds for road maintenance while the hold is in place. It doesn't affect the HOA's operating account, but it removes the road maintenance reserve from the board's control at the same time the road's ownership is being litigated. The institutional cascade had been running for a week, and Marilyn had not yet called Cecil directly. She had called on a Tuesday, 8 days after the gate installation, the reservation of rights letters in the mail, the reserve account frozen, the quiet title action in the court's active case index, and 140 households entering a keypad code twice daily to pass through a gate on someone else's land. Her call had come at 2 p.m., the same time of day, Cecil had noticed, that Robert Hale had called Walter Greer and Sandra Price had called Harlan Dodd. The hour when a president who has exhausted the board's formal options makes the direct call. She had said, "Mr. Rowe, this is Marilyn Cross, president of the Ridgeline Estates HOA. I think you and I need to talk directly." He had said, "I'm listening." She had said, "What you have done to this community in the past 8 days, the gate, the lawsuit, the title insurance letters, the reserve account freeze, you have created a crisis for 140 families who bought their homes here in good faith, who had nothing to do with whatever Pinnacle Homes did or didn't do in 1997. These are people who have lived here for 20 years. They drive that road every morning to take their kids to school. They drive it every evening to come home. You put a gate on it. You froze our maintenance fund. You sent their insurance companies letters questioning their coverage. For what? For a paperwork gap from a developer who has been out of business for 15 years. Cecil had let her finish. He had said, "Ms. Cross, the gate is on my property. It is installed at my parcel's western boundary, on land I own by deed recorded April 3rd, 2024, and by chain of title running to a federal patent issued in 1887. The gate has a code that works. No resident of Ridgeline Estates has been prevented from using Ridgeline Drive. The code opens the gate, and the gate opens inward. I have not blocked anyone's access. I have placed a gate on my property." She had said, "You know what that gate means to people. You know what it does to them every morning when they have to enter a code to get out of their own neighborhood. You installed it deliberately to create exactly this pressure." He had said, "I installed it because I own the road corridor, and the gate is the physical record of that ownership. The reservation of rights letters came from the title insurer's own monitoring systems. I did not contact them. The reserve account hold came from the bank's covenant notification requirement. I did not contact them. The institutional responses you are describing are the natural consequence of a quiet title action affecting a road that 140 title insurance policies represent as legally accessed. Those consequences would have occurred whether or not the gate was there. The gate did not create the crisis. The absence of a recorded easement created the crisis. It has been creating it since 1997. She had said, "You're holding this community hostage." He had said, "I'm a property owner with a deed and a survey. You're a community with a road on someone else's land. The gate stays until there's a recorded easement in the county deed records. That's the only condition for its removal. Clara Venn's number is in the demand letter." She had said, "What does a fair easement look like to you?" He had said, "Clara Venn will discuss that with your counsel when your board is ready to negotiate." The demand letter describes the components. The gate stays until the easement records. She had been quiet for a moment. Then she had said, "I've been president of this HOA for 4 years. I've maintained that road, funded that road, resurfaced that road. I have put this community's money into that road because I believed it was ours. You're telling me that every dollar we spent and every hour I put in was on your property?" He had said, "Yes. Everything from 1999 forward. Pinnacle Homes built the road on Gordon Flat's parcel without his knowledge or permission. He died in 2007 without knowing it was there. The estate sat dormant for 17 years. Nobody looked at the right chain. I did. I bought the parcel. The road is mine." She had said nothing for a moment. When she spoke again, the controlled quality in her voice had shifted to something underneath it, not anger, but the specific sound of a person who has invested 4 years in something and is hearing for the first time that the foundation was never there. She had said, "Why didn't you come to us before you bought it? You could have told us. We could have fixed it before you bought the land, specifically to use it against us. He had said, Ms. Cross, the defect has been in the deed records since 1997, 25 years before I found it. I found it because I read the right chain. Any title examiner conducting a full chain review of the flat parcel in connection with a transaction affecting your development would have found it. None did because none looked. I looked. I bought the parcel, and I am now asking for the instrument that should have been in the records before the road was built. That is not using a defect against you. That is asking for what the law required in 1997 and never got. She had said, the board meets Thursday. He had said, the demand letter has Clara's number. He had ended the call and had written in his title research log, call from Marilyn Cross, HOA president, approximately 2 p.m. Tuesday. She requested gate removal and characterized action as holding community hostage. Advised, gate is on my property. Gate stays until easement records. She asked what fair easement looks like, redirected to Clara Venn. She noted 4 years maintaining road she believed was HOA's. Board meeting Thursday. Reservation of rights letters, 134 properties, 3 underwriters. Reserve account, administrative hold. Gate, operational, code active. Matter, proceeding. He had initialed the entry. He had driven to the gate that evening at dusk. The May evening cool on the ridge, the timber on both sides of the road corridor dark in the fading light. The gate closed across the pavement at his boundary, the keypad's green standby light blinking steadily. He had photographed the gate in the closed position against the evening light, and had noted in his field notebook, Day 9, gate intact, keypad operational, no tampering, road corridor condition, normal. He had driven north along Ridgeline Drive to the HOA's main gate, his parcel's road running through his timberland, the HOA's residents' cars parked in their driveways visible through the trees at the development's southern lots, and had turned around at the main gate's stone pillars and had driven back south to the county highway. 1.1 miles, his deed, his survey, his gate. The easement would record in the county deed records, or the gate would stay. He had gone home. Marilyn had filed the emergency petition with the County Road Commission on a Thursday, 2 days after her call to Cecil, the board meeting having produced one actionable decision: pursue the implied dedication claim through the county's administrative process simultaneously with the court litigation, creating a parallel track that might produce a faster resolution than the quiet title action's timeline. The petition had been Breckenridge's recommendation, a strategic filing designed to establish the County Road Commission's position on the dedication question before the court hearing, on the theory that a county administrative finding recognizing Ridgeline Drive as a public road would significantly strengthen the HOA's implied dedication argument in the quiet title proceeding. If the commission accepted the petition and recognizing the road as a public road by implied dedication, the court would have a county agency's administrative determination to consider alongside the deed chain. If the commission denied the petition, the HOA had lost nothing that wasn't already at risk in the court action. The petition had been 14 pages, Breckenridge's strongest work, Clara had noted when she reviewed the public filing. It had argued the implied dedication claim on 3 foundations. First, Pinnacle Homes' construction of the road to county specification using a county-issued construction permit constituted an offer of dedication to the public. Second, 25 years of continuous use by the Ridgeline Estates community and their guests constituted public acceptance of that dedication. Third, the county's issuance of a road construction permit for the road had created a reasonable expectation of public road status that the county was now equitably obligated to honor. The petition had included as exhibits the 1997 road construction permit, the HOA's road maintenance records from 2001 through 2024, the 2012 and 2021 resurfacing contracts, and affidavits from 11 Ridgeline Estates residents attesting to their continuous use of Ridgeline Drive as their only access to the county highway for periods ranging from 12 to 24 years. Clara had called Cecil after reviewing the petition filing and had said, "The 3 foundation argument is creative, but each foundation has a structural problem that the commission will identify if their staff does the title work. The construction permit foundation fails because a permit is a regulatory authorization, not a property instrument. It authorizes construction activity. It does not transfer or encumber property rights, and it cannot constitute a dedication offer by an owner who never signed it and apparently never knew the road was being built on his land. The public use foundation fails because public acceptance of a dedication requires acceptance by a competent governmental authority, not by the users themselves. 25 years of residential use is private use by a defined community, not public acceptance. The equitable obligation foundation fails because equitable estoppel against a government body requires that the government made a representation the petitioner relied on to their detriment, and a road construction permit issued to a developer does not constitute the government's representation that the road is or will become public. Cecil had said, "Will the commission do the title work?" She had said, "The commission's staff engineer will pull the deed records as a standard part of the petition review. What they find will determine how the commission frames its denial, because it will be a denial." The County Road Commission had assigned the petition to its staff engineer, a woman named Patricia Dole, whose standard practice for implied dedication petitions was to pull the parcel records, the road index, the county maintenance records, and the construction permit file before preparing the staff report for the commission's monthly meeting. She had pulled all four within a week of the petition's filing. The parcel records had produced the same findings Cecil had made in 2022, and Clara had confirmed before the demand letter. The road corridor ran within the flat parcel's western margin for its full 1.1-mile length, the deed now showing Cecil Rowe as grantee per the April 3, 2024 recording. No easement recorded, no road dedication recorded in the county deed records at any point in the chain. The road index had confirmed what Cecil had found in 2022. Ridgeline Drive was not listed in the county's road index. The county's road index was the definitive record of roads accepted into the county's maintenance system. Every county road had a road index entry, an acceptance date, a road number, and a maintenance history. Ridgeline Drive had none of these. It had never been submitted for acceptance, had never been inspected for acceptance, and had never been assigned a road number. The county maintenance records had produced the commission's most significant finding. There were no county maintenance records for Ridgeline Drive. The county's road maintenance department had never graded, patched, plowed, signed, or in any way maintained Ridgeline Drive. The road had been maintained entirely by the Ridgeline Estates HOA. The HOA's own maintenance records, submitted as exhibits to the petition, inadvertently documented this fact with precision. Every maintenance entry from 2001 through 2024 was an HOA action, HOA funded, HOA contracted, with no county participation of any kind. The HOA's evidence of maintenance had proven the opposite of what the petition needed. It had established that the county had never maintained the road, and therefore had never exercised the governmental maintenance authority that typically accompanies public road acceptance. The construction permit file had confirmed Breckenridge's first foundation's fatal defect. The 1997 permit had been issued to Pinnacle Homes LLC as the applicant. The permit described the road as a private road on the applicant's property, and the permit contained the standard notation on all private road construction permits. This permit authorizes construction activity only and does not constitute a road dedication or a commitment by the county to accept the road into the county road system. The notation had been on the permit since 1997. Breckenridge had not included the permit's full text in the petition's exhibit. He had included the permit's cover page and the construction specifications. The notation was on page 3 of the permit's standard conditions. Patricia Dole had read page 3. She had prepared the staff report in 12 days, a 4-page document summarizing her findings and recommending denial of the petition on 3 independent grounds. First, the road construction permit did not constitute a dedication offer because it was issued to the developer, not executed by the parcel owner, and contained an explicit disclaimer of dedication intent. Second, the county had no maintenance records for Ridgeline Drive and had never exercised governmental maintenance authority over the road, precluding a finding of public acceptance. Third, the road was not listed in the county road index and had never been submitted for acceptance, the foundational requirement for recognition as a county road. The commission had held its monthly meeting on the second Tuesday of the following month. a standard agenda with the Ridgeline Drive petition listed as item 7 of 11. Breckenridge had attended in person to present the HOA's argument. The commission's chair had asked 2 questions after Breckenridge's presentation. Did the county have maintenance records for this road? And was the road in the county road index? Breckenridge had said, "The HOA has maintained the road, which constitutes community acceptance of the dedication." The chair had said, "I asked about county maintenance records in the road index." Breckenridge had said, "No, the road is not in the index." The chair had said, "Thank you." The commission had voted 4-0 to deny the petition, accepting Patricia Dole's staff report's findings and recommendation without modification. The commission's finding had been filed in the county's road records the following week, a 1-page document indexed under Ridgeline Drive's location description, the finding stating, "Ridgeline Drive is not a county road. The road has not been accepted into the county road system, has never been submitted for acceptance, and is not listed in the county road index. The county has no maintenance records for Ridgeline Drive. The implied dedication claim submitted in the emergency petition is denied on the grounds that no valid dedication offer has been identified and no governmental acceptance of the road has occurred. This finding is filed for public record." Clara had called Cecil the morning after the commission's finding recorded and had said, "The county's finding is in the road records. It's a public document. Every attorney, every title examiner, and every underwriter who pulls the road records for Ridgeline Drive from this point forward will find the commission's finding alongside the deed chain. The implied dedication argument is now foreclosed, not just in the court proceeding, but in the county's administrative record." Cecil had said, "How many reservation of rights letters now?" She had said, "The 4th underwriter sent its letters last week. The smaller regional carrier, 6 properties. Total, 140 properties. All 4 underwriters, every Ridgeline Estates title policy under reservation of rights, and the commission's denial will trigger a 2nd round of underwriter attention. Their legal departments will want the commission's finding in their investigation files because it directly addresses the public road dedication argument, which was the HOA's strongest alternative theory for establishing access rights independent of Cecil's ownership. He had said, "Marilyn hasn't called again." Clara had said, "The board meeting after the commission's denial will be the moment. She'll either call you or she'll call me. One of those calls is productive and one isn't." Cecil had been photographing the gate every morning since the installation, a daily discipline he had maintained as the physical record of the gate's continuous presence, the photographs dated and filed in sequence in the title research folder. Each morning at 7 a.m., he had driven to the gate, photographed it in the closed position with the keypad's standby light visible, noted the gate's condition in his field notebook, confirmed the keypad was operational, and driven back to the ranch. The photographs ran in an unbroken daily series: the gate against the morning light, the road running north through the timber, the survey monument at the boundary visible in the foreground of each image. The gate had not been tampered with. The keypad had not been damaged. No resident had approached him at the gate. The code continued to work. He had tested it himself each morning before photographing, and the HOA's residents continued to use it, the gate swinging open for their morning departures and evening returns, the daily rhythm of 140 households entering 4 digits twice a day to pass through a gate on someone else's land. He had noted in his field notebook on day 31, the morning after the commission's finding recorded, "Gate intact, keypad operational, County Road Commission denial recorded yesterday. Title insurers, 140 properties, 4 underwriters, all under reservation of rights. Court action, pending. Demand, outstanding. No contact from HOA board since Marilyn's call on day 9. Matter, proceeding." He had stood at the gate that morning longer than usual. The June morning, clear on the ridge, the timber on both sides of the road corridor, green in the early light, the road running north through his parcel toward the HOA's main gate. He had looked at the survey monument at the boundary, the iron pin he had set at closing, its cap stamped with his name and license number and the date of the survey. His name, his number, his gate. He had gone back to his truck and had driven north along Ridgeline Drive one more time. The habit he had developed since the gate installation, the daily confirmation that the road was as he had left it, the pavement in the condition the HOA had maintained it, the road corridor running through his timberland and the straight corridor Pinnacle Homes had cut in 1998 on a parcel they had never owned. He had turned around at the main gate's stone pillars and had driven south, past the development's southern lots, past the timber on both sides, back to the gate at the boundary, through the open gate on the way out, and back to the county highway. 1.1 miles. His deed, his survey, his gate. The county's finding in the road records. The title insurer's letters and 140 policy files. The hearing was coming. The commission had closed the administrative track. The court would decide the rest. He had written the morning's log entry and had gone inside. The hearing was set for a Wednesday in late July. The quiet title action had been on Judge Orwell's docket since the filing date. The same consolidated assignment that had handled every prior proceeding in this series. The judge's familiarity with recorded instrument disputes and HOA enforcement actions evident in the scheduling order she had issued 3 weeks after the filing. A firm hearing date, a discovery cutoff 2 weeks prior, and a pre-hearing briefing requirement that had produced Clara's 40-page brief and Breckenridge's 31-page response. The courtroom was the same small county district room. Marilyn sat in the gallery's front row with all 4 remaining board members, Breckenridge at the respondents' table with his property law associate and the water rights consultant he had retained for the prescriptive easement theory. Clara sat at the petitioner's table with Cecil to her left, the title research file on the table, the deed chain binder beside it. 3 rows behind Marilyn sat the counsel for 2 of the 4 title insurance underwriters, a litigation partner from a regional firm retained jointly by the 2 national carriers, and a solo practitioner retained by the larger regional carrier. They had filed notices of appearance as interested parties. Their presence in the gallery, the visible institutional weight of $54 million in aggregate policy exposure, attending a county district court hearing on a chain of title that went back to 1887. Clara had presented in 50 minutes, the longest presentation in any of these proceedings, because the deed chain's depth required more foundation than a dam operating license or a reservoir use agreement, and because the County Road Commission's administrative record added a documentary layer that the dam safety cases had not carried. She had opened with the 1887 patent, the document on the projector, the federal homestead entry, the legal description, the grantor James Aldrich. She had said, "This is where the chain begins. 137 years of recorded title, 14 conveyances, every instrument read and verified. The road corridor that Ridgeline Estates has used as its only access to the county highway for 25 years runs within this parcel's western margin for its full 1.1-mile length. It has run within this parcel since 1998, when Pinnacle Homes built it here without the parcel owner's knowledge or permission. It runs within this parcel today because Cecil Rowe purchased the parcel at estate sale in March 2024. His deed recorded April 3, 2024. And no instrument in the chain from 1887 to the present conveys any right to any person to build, maintain, or use a road on this parcel's western margin." She had moved through the chain in sequence, each conveyance on the projector, the boundary description, the reservations clause, the easement grants. 14 instruments, 14 times the same finding. No road easement, no road dedication, no reference to any road corridor on the parcel's western margin until Gordon Flat's 1979 margin notation, which referenced timber access roads on the northern and eastern margins and was silent on the western margin where the road ran. She had placed the Pinnacle Homes road construction permit on the projector, the cover page, then page 3, the standard conditions notation enlarged. This permit authorizes construction activity only and does not constitute a road dedication or a commitment by the county to accept the road into the county road system, she had said. The permit the HOA's petition cited as a dedication offer contained, on its 3rd page, an explicit disclaimer of dedication intent. The county knew in 1997 that a construction permit was not a dedication. Pinnacle Homes knew in 1997. The county building department's standard conditions have carried this language since 1989. The petition's first foundation was contradicted by the exhibit the petition submitted to support it. She had placed the County Road Commission's denial finding on the projector, the 1-page document, the Commission's 3 independent denial grounds, the filing date. She had said, The County Road Commission reviewed this petition with the benefit of a full title search, the county's maintenance records, and the road index. Their finding is in the county's road records. Ridgeline Drive is not a county road, has never been submitted for acceptance, has never been maintained by the county, and is not subject to implied dedication on the submitted evidence. The county's administrative finding on the dedication question is now in the public record and is before this court. She had placed the HOA's own maintenance records on the projector. The records submitted as exhibits to the commission petition, 23 years of HOA maintenance entries, each one documenting an HOA action on a road corridor within Cecil's parcel. She had said, "The HOA submitted these records to the County Road Commission as evidence of public acceptance of the road's dedication. The commission correctly found that HOA maintenance is not governmental acceptance. But these records serve a second purpose in this proceeding. They are the HOA's own contemporaneous documentation of 25 years of unauthorized use of Cecil Rowe's parcel, 25 years of trespass, documented in the HOA's own records, submitted voluntarily to a government agency, and now in the court's evidentiary record." She had placed the title insurance dimension last, the 4 underwriters, the 140 policies, the aggregate coverage figure, the reservation of rights letters now in every policy file. She had said, "The title insurers' counsel are present in this courtroom today as interested parties because their aggregate policy exposure on the access coverage question exceeds $54 million. Their presence is the financial dimension of the legal question this court is deciding. The recorded access easement that Cecil Rowe proposed in his demand letter, the instrument that Pinnacle Homes was required to obtain from Gordon Flatt in 1997 and never did, is the instrument that resolves the title insurer's exposure, clears the reservation of rights from 140 policy files, and closes the administrative record in the county's road index." Breckenridge had presented for 40 minutes. His prescriptive easement argument had been the most carefully developed section. The adverse possession theory had been dropped from the briefing after Clara's exclusivity analysis had been filed, and Breckenridge had concentrated his remaining argument on the prescriptive use claim and the public policy dimension. His property law associate had presented the prescriptive easement case law, citing 7 state court decisions recognizing prescriptive road easements over private land. Clara had cross-examined on each. In 6 of the 7 cases, the servient estate owner had been present and had failed to object during the prescriptive period. In the 7th, the owner had been absent, but the estate had been administered by an active executor who had received notice of the use. Gordon Flatt had been absent, had received no notice of the road's construction, and his estate had been in administrative dormancy from 2007 to 2023, with no active executor capable of objecting. The prescriptive clock had run against an owner who did not know the road existed. Breckenridge's associate had said, "The owner's knowledge is not strictly required for the prescriptive period to run. Use that is open and notorious places a constructive duty on the owner to observe and object." Clara had said, "Constructive notice requires that the use be observable to an owner exercising reasonable diligence." Gordon Flatt was in Phoenix. His estate was dormant. What diligence was available to a deceased man's unrepresented estate? The constructive notice doctrine assumes an owner capable of exercising diligence. The prescriptive easement theory requires, at minimum, an owner who could have known. The record does not support that element here. Breckenridge had presented the public policy argument in his closing, the strongest emotional register of the proceeding, the argument that 140 families' only access to the county highway could not be closed by a property owner who had purchased the parcel specifically to use the title defect as leverage. He had said, "Whatever the deed change shows, this court has equitable authority to fashion a remedy that does not strand 140 households without access to a public road. The court should exercise that authority." Judge Orwell had asked her question during Breckenridge's presentation, the same question, the same format. She had waited until he completed the prescriptive easement argument, looked at her notes, and said, "Mr. Breckenridge, does the Ridgeline Estates HOA hold any recorded instrument, any easement, any road dedication, any access agreement, any instrument of any kind recorded in the county deed records, establishing the HOA's legal right to use Ridgeline Drive?" Breckenridge had said, "Your Honor, the HOA's position is that the combination of 25 years of prescriptive use, the implied dedication arising from the developer's construction, and the community's acceptance," Orwell had said, "recorded instrument, yes or no?" Breckenridge had said, "No, Your Honor." Orwell had written a note. She had looked at the title insurer's counsel in the gallery's front rows. She had said, "Continue." She had issued her ruling from the bench 30 minutes after Breckenridge concluded. The deed chain, complete and unbroken from the 1887 federal patent to Cecil Rowe's April 3, 2024 deed. No instrument in the chain conveyed any right-of-way, road easement, or access right to any person for the road corridor on the parcel's western margin. Title to the road corridor was quieted in Cecil Rowe's name. The implied dedication claim, denied, consistent with the County Road Commission's administrative finding. The road construction permit was not a dedication offer. The county had no maintenance records for the road and had never accepted it. The HOA's community use was not governmental acceptance. The dedication claim failed on both required elements. The prescriptive easement claim, denied. The hostile element required use against an owner capable of objecting. The record did not support constructive notice to a deceased owner's dormant, unrepresented estate during the critical portion of the prescriptive period. The prescriptive claim failed. The adverse possession claim, denied. Exclusivity element not established. Shared community road use is not exclusive possession. The public policy argument, acknowledged. The court recognized the equitable dimension of 140 households' access dependency and fashioned the remedy accordingly. The order. Cecil Rowe held fee simple title to the road corridor, quieted against all claims of the HOA. The HOA was directed to negotiate a recorded permanent access easement with Cecil Rowe within 90 days of the order's date, the easement to be appurtenant to the HOA's common area parcel, and to address the right of access for all Ridgeline Estates property owners, the utility corridor rights, and fair compensation for 25 years of unauthorized use. If no recorded easement was executed and filed within 90 days, Cecil Rowe was authorized to close the gate permanently, and the HOA would be required to identify and construct an alternative access route at its own expense within 1 year, the HOA bearing all costs of acquisition and construction. She had said, "The court is aware that this order places the HOA in a difficult position. The court is also aware that the instrument being ordered, a recorded access easement, is the instrument that Pinnacle Homes was required to obtain in 1997 before building this road. 25 years of community investment in a road built on someone else's land without a recorded right is not a basis for extinguishing the landowner's title. It is the basis for understanding why the recorded instrument matters, and why the 90-day window is the court's acknowledgement that a fair negotiation is better than a permanent closure." She had gathered her notes. Cecil had set his hand on the title research file on the table, the chain from 1887, the gap from 1997, the gate from April, the ruling from today. Every instrument in sequence, the record complete. Clara had said quietly, "The permanent closure authorization is the order's force. No HOA board survives telling 140 households to find another road." Cecil had said, "Marilyn resigns before the weekend." He had picked up the title research file and had followed Clara out of the courtroom into the July afternoon. The gate was still on the road. The easement was 90 days away. Marilyn's resignation letter went to the community forum on a Friday, 2 days after the judgment, 1 paragraph, effective immediately. 5 years of service to a community she loved. No further explanation. She did not mention the hearing. She did not mention the quiet title judgment. She did not mention the permanent closure authorization that a board she had led to a 5-0 rejection vote had now produced as the community's operative legal reality. The new interim board president was Dennis Park, Unit 78, the resident who had asked about title insurance at the first emergency board meeting and had called his insurer the next morning. He had been on the board for 2 years as the facilities committee chair, the member who had signed the 2021 resurfacing contracts, who knew the road's maintenance history better than anyone on the board except Marilyn, and who had understood from the moment Cecil's demand letter arrived that the road's physical condition and its legal condition were two entirely different things. He had assumed the interim presidency the morning after Marilyn's resignation and had called Clara's office at 8 a.m. He had asked to be connected to Cecil directly. Clara had conferred the call. He had said, "Mr. Rowe, I'm Dennis Park, interim president of the Ridgeline Estates HOA. I've read the quiet title judgment, and I've read the demand letter, and I want to start negotiations today. What does a fair easement look like from your side?" Cecil had said 3 components: a permanent recorded access easement appurtenant to the HOA's common area parcel, a perpetual right of ingress and egress for all Ridgeline Estates property owners, their guests, and service vehicles, running with the land and binding on all successors. Recorded utility easements for the electric, telephone, and fiber optic infrastructure in the road corridor, at fair market value per utility corridor, and compensation for 25 years of unauthorized use. The trespass period from 1999 through the easement's recording date, calculated at the county's established rate for private road corridor use, plus a maintenance cost share going forward, covering the road corridor's ongoing upkeep, the HOA carrying the maintenance cost as the primary beneficiary of the easement. Dennis had said, the water rights economist's figure in the demand letter was $218,000 for the trespass period. Cecil had said, that's the figure. Adjusted for the utility corridors, it comes to $241,000 total. Dennis had said, I'll have new counsel retained by Monday. We'll be ready to negotiate Tuesday. The negotiation had taken 4 weeks. Clara and the HOA's new property counsel, Susan Holt, retained by Dennis the following Monday, the same water rights and title attorney who had represented the Lakeview Shores and Lakeview Commons HOAs in the dam proceedings, had worked through the easement's operative provisions in 3 sessions. The access easement scope had been the most detailed negotiation. The permitted users, the vehicle weight limits relevant to the HOA's maintenance equipment, the emergency vehicle access provision, the HOA's right to maintain the road surface within the easement corridor, and the future improvement provisions governing road widening or resurfacing. The utility easements had been straightforward, a standard corridor width of 8 feet on each side of the existing infrastructure, the easement terms matching the utility company's standard easement language. The compensation figure had settled at $228,000 in the second session. The water rights economist's trespass calculation, adjusted by a passive delivery discount, reflecting the HOA's good faith maintenance of the corridor during the trespass period. The maintenance investment credited against the raw trespass figure. The maintenance cost share had been 80-20, the HOA carrying 80 as the sole beneficiary of the access easement, Cecil carrying 20 as the parcel owner with an interest in the road corridor's condition. The HOA had wired $228,000 to Clara's trust account on the instrument's execution date, the wire arriving at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, Clara dispersing to Cecil by end of business the same day. The access easement, the 3 utility easements, and the maintenance cost share agreement had recorded in the county deed records 4 days later, the instruments appearing in both parcel indices, Cecil's 900-acre parcel and the HOA's 22-acre common area parcel. The road access right finally documented in the county deed records 27 years after Pinnacle Homes had built the road on Gordon Flats parcel without asking. The title insurers had closed their reservation of rights files within 2 weeks of the recording. Each underwriter's legal department had confirmed that the recorded access easement resolved the access coverage defect. The easement, now in the Schedule B exceptions of every policy file, as a recorded encumbrance on the servient estate. The access right, documented in the deed records as the Schedule A coverage, had always represented it to be. The 4 underwriters had sent confirmation letters to 140 policyholders. The reservation of rights was withdrawn. The policy's access coverage was reinstated without qualification. The matter was closed. Meridian Community Bank had released the road maintenance reserve account from administrative hold the same week. The $94,000 reserve available to the HOA's board for the first time since the gate had gone up. Cecil had gone to the gate the morning after the easement recorded. He had driven to the county highway junction at 7 a.m. The August morning warm and clear, the ridge visible to the north, The gate closed across Ridgeline Drive at the parcel boundary, the keypad's green standby light blinking in the morning light. He had photographed the gate in the closed position one final time, the last in the daily series that had run from the installation date through the recording date, the complete photographic record of the gate's presence filed in sequence in the title research folder. He had set the camera on the hood of his truck and had taken the keypad unit off the north post. 4 bolts, a minute's work, and had set it in the truck bed. He had taken the swing arm assembly from the truck bed, a standard residential swing arm, the kind that held a gate open by default, spring-loaded, the gate swinging closed only when manually pulled, and had installed it on the south post in place of the locking mechanism. The gate now defaulted to open. It would swing closed if pushed, but would not latch without manual engagement of a secondary pin that Cecil had no intention of engaging. He had stepped back and had looked at the gate, open, the swing arm holding it perpendicular to the road, the pavement of Ridgeline Drive running north through his timberland to the HOA's main gate, 1.1 miles ahead, the road corridor clear and open, the gate present as a structure, but not as a barrier. He had pulled his title research log from the truck's cab and had written the entry at the roadside, standing at the boundary in the morning light. August 19, 2026. Easement recorded August 18, 2026. Access easement number 2026-AE-0211. Utility easements numbers 2026-UE-0088, 0089, 0090, and maintenance agreement number 2026-MA-0112, recorded in county deed records at both parcel indices. Compensation paid and disbursed, $228,000. Title insurers, reservation of rights withdrawn, 140 policies cleared. Meridian reserve account, hold released, keypad removed, swing arm installed, gate open by default. Title quieted per court judgment dated July 23, 2026. He had looked at the entry. He had written the final line. Easement recorded. Road access confirmed. Title quieted. Matter recorded. He had initialed it and closed the log. He had walked the road. He had started at the gate, at the survey monument at the boundary, the iron pin with his name and license number stamped in the cap, and had walked north along Ridgeline Drive toward the HOA's main gate, the full 1.1 miles. The pavement was smooth under his boots, the 2021 resurfacing still holding well, the lane markings clear, the drainage ditches clean. The timber grew to the road shoulders on both sides. His timber, his parcel, the road corridor running through it, as it had run since 1998, now with a recorded instrument in the county deed records saying what the road was, and what the right was, and who held what. He had walked slowly, not the pace of a man covering distance, but the pace of a title examiner reading a chain, the deliberate attention to each section of the corridor, the overhead electric line running along the north shoulder, now under a recorded utility easement, the buried fiber optic conduit beneath the south shoulder under a recorded utility easement, the road surface itself the subject of a recorded access easement, and a maintenance cost-share agreement that would govern its upkeep for as long as the Ridgeline Estates community existed. He had reached the HOA's main gate at the development's entrance, the stone pillars, the wrought iron gate standing open in the morning, the development's streets visible beyond. He had stood at the main gate and had looked back south along Ridgeline Drive, the 1.1-mile corridor running away from him through the timber to the county highway, his gate visible as a pale structure at the far end, where the road met the county right-of-way. He had looked at both gates, his, open by default at the south end, the HOA's, open by default at the north end, the road running between them, documented, recorded, the gap closed. His supervisor in 1981 had handed him a chain of title and had said, "Find the gap." He had spent 40 years finding gaps. He had found this one in 2022, documented it through 2024, bought the parcel in March, recorded his deed in April, installed the gate in May, watched the County Road Commission deny the petition in June, sat at the petitioner's table in July, and walked to the recording confirmation portal in August. The gap was in the deed records now, not as an absence, as an instrument. Access easement number 2026-AE-0211. Recorded August 18, 2026, both parcel indices. The thing that should have been there in 1997 was there now. The chain was complete. He had walked back south along Ridgeline Drive to his truck. 1.1 miles, the same road. His name on the deed and the easement and the survey and the quiet title judgment. All of it in the county deed records, indexed and permanent, the way recorded instruments were supposed to be. He had reached his truck at the south gate. He had looked at the swing arm holding the gate open, the road running north through the timber, the morning light on the pavement. He had put the title research log in the truck. He had gotten in. He had gone back to his truck.